Welcome back to Between the Levees, the season three finale with Mr. Clay Adams. I
God
am
bless
ad-
everyone.
Welcome to the show, sir. I am admittedly late to the game with your story. I know there's a whole lot to cover, and you don't seem too concerned with much of anything, any of it sharing. So I don't
Not at all.
know.
I hope it can touch somebody else's life, and I hope it brings more people to the information that you put out between the levees.
I hope so too. How long have you been? Have you been tuned into the show for a while, or where did you
Just
first hear
real
about me?
recent, yeah,
Yeah.
through you, Tim. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
Well,
I know we've been trying to do this for a couple months now, so we finally got it done.
yeah, you've been working quite a lot. Who do you work for, by the way?
You want the in the 8 years I've been on the water?
No, no, currently. Who's your current position? You're a mate, right?
Yes, yes. So my permanent employer that most recently was Morgan Towing out of Belchaz, Louisiana, on the other side of the from New Orleans, um, down on Highway 27, Bel Chase Highway. I worked for them for 3 months, and then I resigned on good terms. We still talk every day, pretty much. You know, I mean, not, but we're Facebook friends, Morgan and I. Uh, it wasn't a pride thing, but it was just like I need more money and I need insurance, and it wasn't going to happen, so I had to move on. You know,
What boat were you on recently?
I was on the Big John and the St. Peregrine.
Was that where you rode out that little winter storm?
What was it? The what, Tim?
Was that where you rode out that little winter storm we had?
See what? When was? No, that was Coastal River. I tripped for 15 days for Mr. Allen over at Coastal Marine Contractors. They're out of Slidell, but I was working at Port Bentonville, St. Louis Bay,
Right.
Mississippi. Yeah. So what that they had going on? They're unloading pipe off of a off rail cars, and then we're loading it into an open hopper old tank barge that we had cut the top off of, and so it's a 55 by 300, and then we're hauling the pipe to Texas for the pipeline. So that's been the gig there, and then bringing empties back, and then hauling steel rolls into or Miss Slip right there over by where the Folgers plant is in New Orleans.
Okay. Well, let's back up. I know in conversation you've told me I think the first time you were locked up was at 19. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. I
Well,
got off
let,
probation at 17 as a juvenile. She let me off probation after I got my GED, uh, and I was 18 years old, and I got my first. I got in trouble as an adult at the age of 18. I put it off for 13 months, and went to the prison for the first time at the age of 19. Yeah,
let's begin where it all began. Let's work from where you were born, kind of, your situation growing up. What ultimately led you to this probation into prison at
sure,
19.
sure, sure.
And again,
So
be as thorough and detailed as you care to be.
yeah, absolutely.
I do have all the time in the world today.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim, and I appreciate that very much. So I love free roaming. So this is how I like to connect to other people. And am I okay on the camera? Okay, so this is
Just
how I
fine.
like to connect to other people. Uh, my life's an open book. Is there things that I wish I could go back and do over? Part of me, yes, but part of me, no, because that's made me who I am as a man in maturity, in character, and in my relationship with Jesus Christ. Nobody in the Bible, I'm just going to hit this real quick, but nobody in the Bible was a saint. They might have become a saint later on, but they were martyrs to begin with. They were adulterers, they were murderers, they were thieves, they were liars, they were all that stuff. And so, God had to break me down. So I feel like, did God want me to be a drug addict? No. Did God want me to spend 25 years in prison? No. Did God want me to grow up in a broken family? No. But He has a purpose for me and a plan, and He doesn't always reveal that to Him. He doesn't let us see the whole crystal ball, if that makes sense, the analogy of it. He gives us a look into it, but you got to remember, we walk by faith, not by sight. You understand? So, I mean, the perfect illustration of that is Paul, who was Silas. Wrote 13 books in the New Testament. He was a martyr. He was a serial killer. He was he was 10 times a John Wayne Gacy or I mean, the Zodiac killer. I mean, you can put all them together, and that still wouldn't equal what Paul was. And God put the reptile scales over his eyes, and dropped him to his knees. And for 3 days, he couldn't see nothing. He said, I need you to trust me, and I need you to walk by faith, not by sight. And he knew that. And then he allowed a messenger of Satan to put a thorn in his side because he knew that Paul's pride at some point, once he got comfortable in his walk, would come back to haunt him. And Paul, I'm a lot like King David, but I'm also a lot like Paul in relation that it's not the world, it's not the temptation of the drugs, it's not peer pressure, it's not a weakness within me. It's the other clay that says, dude, you just rode the river for 90 days. You got 20 bands in the bank. You've been sober. You've been sacrificing to do the things that you do and to touch other people's lives. Now you're getting ready to go home for 2 or 3 weeks. Let's celebrate. You deserve it. And that's been my demon, Tim. You know what I mean? It's like, you know what I mean? And so we'll get to this, but okay. So born and raised, Vincennes, Indiana, county of Knox. It is the original state. I mean, it's the original first city of Indiana and the original capital of Indiana. George Rogers Clark Memorial. It's the French Revolution. So it's an old war town from 200 some years ago. The monument sits on the Wabash River. So when you go down to the Memorial Bridge and you're downtown Vincennes on First Street, looking across the Wabash River, you're looking at Illinois. So it's southern Indiana on the Illinois line, about 45 miles from Kentucky on south. So yeah, so I'm a Yankee. You know what I mean? Born and raised, living in the South. I'm the oldest of two boys. Um, my grandma and grandpa, my dad's parents, they were together 50, 60 years, married 53, never spoke an ugly word to each other. Grandma was worked at Good Samaritan Hospital. She was a nurse from 48 to 98, 50 flat years. Everybody knew Bonnie Adams. She did the cooking. Grandpa did the dishes. She mowed the yard. Grandpa took care of the garden and did the flowers. Grandpa ran Adams Oil Company. We had Adams Oil Company and two Conoco gas stations. And then we had Adams and Meyer, which we sold Case and Ford farm tractors, Kiwani augers, Bush Hog and Woods rotary cutters, and then Simplicity and Cub Cadet lawnmowers. The farm side and the industrial side with the backhoes and the skid steers and stuff. He did that for 36 years with his other half owner, Paul Meyer. And then we had a Honey Creek Tractor in Terre Haute, Indiana. And then we owned a third of Dan and Wynn Storkels down in Princeton. And so, yeah, my dad had his own business. He did Allied Dirt Works, excavation work with dozers and excavators. And I grew up on a farm. So mom and dad, I wasn't playing. So mom and dad got married. I was born in October 4th of 75. So mom was born in 53. Dad was born in 52. So dad was a year older than mom. Mom went to North. There's three high schools in the county: North Knox Warriors, the South Knox Spartans, and the Vincennes Alices. So the Warriors were always into it with the Spartans, but the Warriors and the Spartans come together to give the Alices the business. And, why don't you all come out in the country where the cattle and the pigs are? Because that's what it is up home. It's old traditional uh, Masonic Christian. It's what your dad's dad did, and you don't dare step on that. Are you a Dryman? Are you an Adams? Are you an Ellerman? Are you a Robinson? Are you a Hatton? You know what I mean? Are you a Hazelman? Are you a Yarber? Are you a Dryman? Or a Veek? You know what I mean? And so that's how that went. So when the oil company, my grandpa sold tractors to half the farmers in the county. And at the time that there was only two oil companies, Adams Oil Company and Farm Bureau, which was co-op. So the same people he sold tractors to, half of them bought diesel fuel and gasoline off of them. So everybody knew John and Bonnie Adams. They had one child, my dad. My dad had two boys. I'm the oldest between me and my younger brother, Nick. Uh, I'm the one that's been the black sheep that lived a crazy life. Now, my grandfather, my dad's dad that raised me, he was the oldest of five kids. So the black sheep within my grandpa and his five siblings was his next closest brother, 16 months apart, Uncle Jim. Uncle Jim was an alcoholic, lost the farm, all that good stuff. And that was unheard of back in the 60s and the 70s. You know what I mean? And so grandpa bought the farm back, moved Uncle Jim down to Florida, and he got clean, gave his life to Jesus Christ, and ended up working at the Ford Lincoln Mercury dealership his whole entire life. Got into the Pentecostal church, had a lawnmower business on the side, and left Indiana as an alcoholic. This was Uncle Jim. my great uncle, left India, left Indiana as an alcoholic, died in a $400,000 house with an indoor swimming pool as a member of the church for the last 30 years. Great thing. And so my grandpa was familiar with it, but they never understood addiction. You're talking about two people that lived in the church, that were born in the 20s, that didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't cuss, was all about, my grandfather was a Freemason and a Shriner. He served in the military. My grandmother was the middle. She was the middle child of three kids. She had a younger sister and an older brother. And she come from down in the hollers on the White River, uh, down in Gibson County. And so, it was barefoot in the garden. You raised your own stuff and you cooked every night. You went to church on Sunday, and it was yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. So I was brought up under a 100-year-old tradition, which I love because I still live it today, and I try to forward it to other people. I mean, when I grew up, you walk in a room, you didn't sit down until you were offered a chair. You look people in the eye, you shake their hand with a firm handshake. It was yes or no, sir. The women and the children always came first. You held the door for them. You understand what I'm saying? And so that's just what it was. And so I guess my brother was planned. So mom and dad got married. We lived a mile down. Dad built a house a mile down the road from grandma and grandpa on top of the hill. Uh, my dad's mother, my great grandma Adams, sold a piece of land to us. Sold us a portion of the land over there because it was called the real place. There was 186 acres there and an old barn where we used to keep the hay put up. And then so dad was able to buy. It had a 26 acre and a 34-acre island woods on it, and the rest was all farmable, all tillage, and then the pole barn. So dad bought, grandpa got 33 acres for my dad, plus 11 of it was farmable, and then he built the house there. So that's where I grew up. It was mom and dad, me. I was born in 75. My brother came along. I was not planned. I was an accident. My brother was planned. He came along in 80. And then in 83, mom and dad divorced. And first after God, but here on earth, God before anything, God before me, God before my kids, God before whatever. Uh, but then here on earth, my mom is my rock. There's nothing that I don't share with her. There's nothing that I don't, and my mother is, she suffered from a skin fungus that got in her system from the dirt in her garden 30 years ago, crippled her nerve damage wise. So she's been on SSI for 30 plus years. I have lived the martyr's life, spent half my life in the world, half my life in prison, half my life doing the devil's work, not as a Satanist or, what I mean, a murderer or anything like that, but just when I say walking in the world, serving self. Everything that you can see and touch and feel, and the pornography and the liquor stores and the drugs and the wild women and the swinger sex and everything that goes on in the world, I did it, and I did it for half my life. And so then I've walked with the Lord for this last half of my life, and then so it's been an experience where would I change it for anything, Tim? No, I would not. However, it on the other side of that, what it has done, it has made it hard to connect with people that have never been through that, people that have never been abused, people that have never been molested, people that have never done time in prison, and all that stuff. It's hard to connect with them because they just don't get it. They've been pampered or taken care of their whole lives and they've had a silver spoon in their mouth and they don't know what's going on. 1 second, Tim. So yeah, mom and dad got divorced in 83, 83, 84. Uh, Mom took me and my brother. We went with her for the first year and a half. I was in the second grade. I was 8. My brother was 4. And then she drug us off to Indianapolis. Now I told my mom, forgive yourself for this because I forgave you years ago. I'm a country boy. I grew up on a cassette deck and 45 records and 8 tracks, smelling like diesel fuel and gasoline, riding old John Deere tractors, spitting Copenhagen, and drinking old Milwaukee tall boys, picking watermelons and cantaloupes in the summertime, farming green bales, putting them up in my great great uncle Elmer's loft. So when she drug us up to Indianapolis and I went to these inner city schools, I was so far out of my element, Tim, I just couldn't. I was 10 years old. And so as a 10-year-old, I told my mom, I said, listen, mom, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make things as hard on you as I possibly can until you let me go back and live with dad. And that's what it is. And so that's what I did. And then she sat me down one day and she said, listen, I'm going to let you go back and live with your dad. Because I wanted to go back to the country, Ken. I wanted to go back to the only thing I knew. You know what I'm saying? I'm not knocking the people that the only thing they knew is grew up in the city. But you take a city boy and put him in the country, he's lost. You take a country boy and put him in the city, and you're like, especially at 10 years old. And she said, I'm going to let you go back and live with your dad, but your brother's staying with me. So I lost my best friend. And I still deal with that today. It was overwhelming, you know, because my brother looked up to me. He thought I was the greatest thing going. And now I'm going to live with dad. He's staying with mom. And I'm going to get to see him starting at 6 o'clock on a Friday night till noon on Sunday, twice a month now for the next 20 years. And that's what it was, man. And so we made the best of it that we could. When my brother got his driver's license and he was a freshman in high school, he came back down to live with us. But moving forward, that's when my adult criminal history started. So we spent the summer of '95 together. And Judge Theobald at the time, he's no longer alive even, but he was the superior, he was superior one court judge. And he wasn't a big fan of the Adamses. He divorced my parents. He was my juvenile judge, and he was my adult judge. So, you know what I mean? So this man's known me. He knows my family. I've been in front of him since I was 14 years old when I ran away from home. And so he's like, yeah. But he did me a solid. And I pled guilty to the battery charge in May of '95, but he let me stay out till September 13th of that year and enjoy the next 4 months of that summer with my brother. So, but in that, here comes Nick down. 15 years we've been apart. So now we're in passing again, Tim. Nick's coming down to live with us again. I'm going off to prison for 3 years on a 6-year sentence. And you know, him and dad, and everybody came with me. Uh, get out of prison in '98. Come home. I'm home for 4 years. Get my shit together for the most part. I meet my daughter's mother. We're together 3 years, and I have a daughter.
Can I back you up a little bit?
Yeah.
Walk me through what you mentioned you ran away at 14 years old. What ended up also leading to you getting locked up?
So I've dealt with anger my entire life up until 8 years ago. 10 years ago was my last extremely violent conviction, felony. Justifiable, yes. I beat a guy up, tried to rape my ex-wife while we were still married, whom, while I was in jail on a probation violation, entered into my house and locked himself in mine and my then wife's bedroom for 2 hours and disrespected our marriage and our house and my wife, you know. And I wasn't out running the streets looking for this dude. However, he got arrested for 5 grams of methamphetamines, and the jail staff who've known me my entire life, a lot of them are lifelong high school friends that are deputies and jailers, were kind enough to put him in the cell block with. You know how that went down. It ended up being a level 5 felony, a trip to the seventh go around to the penitentiary, last and final trip 8 years ago. But that happened when I was 40. Got out of prison when I was 42. Now, so my entire life, I've dealt with, okay, so I grew up with my dad as an only child, but the oldest of two kids. Does that make sense? But I lost my best friend. So I grew up as an only child, even though I was the oldest of two children. My dad was a workaholic. He was brought up, you know, there's 126 hours in a week or 128 hours in a week. You should be working 84 of them. 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, dad was gone. He came home 9, 10 o'clock at night. And that went on every day but Sunday, you know? So when dad came rolling in at night, you know, I'm getting ready to take a shower and lay down. I got school in the morning. So, and then on Saturdays, I went to work with my dad. And then so, you know, I guess a lot of it was let me just back it up to when before mom and dad got divorced. I probably was 3 or 4 years old, Tim. I'm old enough that I remember it as much as I remember your text 30 minutes ago. It will always be stamped in there like it was engraved on a coin. But it was the only time that I ever seen anything physical between my mom and dad. But I seen my dad grab my mother by the head of her hair and jerk her out of the recliner and drag her down the full length of that double wide we lived in. And he didn't hit her or anything, but I watched and listened to my mother scream as he drug her down the hallway by the hair of her head. That made me angry. And as a 4 year, I remember crawling up on the bed and crying with my mom and holding her, worried about her as a little boy. And I think that was the beginning, that was the seed from the world that had anger. That was that anger seed that began, as a seed that took sprout in my life. So moving forward, I grew up without my brother, my best friend. I grew up as an only child. My dad was a workaholic. So who did I spend my time with? Self. Same as I did for 25 years in prison. Self. Same as I have for the last 10 years before Jessica and I. Self. Married to Jesus, married to the river, and that's it. You know, and not interested in a relationship. I come, uh, let me try to keep going on this question here. I know I jump around a lot, Tim, but I had resentment for authority, and I didn't care. I just didn't care. I didn't care. Somewhere within me, something broke. I'm not sure exactly to this very day, at 50 years old and counting, what broke it, and I'm not exactly sure, Tim, what broke, because I'm still a work in progress. I ain't got it all figured out yet, and I may never. But I know each day, whether I'm crawling or walking or running or jumping, I'm steadily moving forward. I'm gaining, I'm not subtracting. You understand what I'm saying? Some days might be a plateau, but by the end of the week, I still made, it might be a 0.735, but that's how far but I still move forward. Does that make sense? So I ran away from home. I missed my mom. I never saw my dad. At this point, I'd been living with his parents I moved in with my dad's mom and dad when I was 12. Dad loved me enough. That's what I want to believe. My dad loved me enough. He wanted me to have a normal life like he did. Do I think that my dad in his 30s at the time, 34, 35, 36, because the dad and I share a birthday. He was born October 4th of 52. I was born October 4th of 75. So I was born on my dad's birthday. We're exactly 23 years apart. So that used to be a really cool thing. You know, I remember one time I bought my dad a BB gun for his birthday so he could give it back to me. I mean, we were best friends, Tim. And when I ran away from home, that put me that same judge, Judge Theobald, Judge Edward C. Theobald, he educated me a juvenile delinquent for running away from home, and he took me back in his chambers and he said, "Hey, I'm gonna let you go home with your dad today, uh, but don't do it again." I did it again because I had no respect for authority. I felt I just wanted to run, and I didn't know. And I still can't sit here and tell you exactly what it is I knew that I was, or that I was exactly that I was running from. I really don't know. I think it was hurt. I think it was abandonment. I think it was loving my dad and him being my best friend so much, and I never got the time that I wanted with him. My mother never being there, but not that she abandoned me. Not that she was a bad mother, because she wasn't. She did everything she could for us, but that mom chose after the divorce to move to Indianapolis and met a very wonderful man named Kent Kirkman, who raised my brother, and he was a fine man. You know what I mean? He was a Christian man. He was a moral and ethical man. They built a nice house on Geist Lake, the same lake that Reggie Miller has. Uh, but they both got up and worked. Mom worked. Tim worked. He was the supervisor of a construction company. But he worked in the office. Sometimes it was on site, but I mean, he wore a certain tie to work. You know what I'm saying? And so my brother had a good life growing up, and I'm very grateful. I was resentful when I was immature and young, but I'm very grateful looking back that my brother had Ken. I mean, Kent, because Kent didn't have any kids, and he was a good dad, good stepdad to my brother. Uh, Probably why my brother to this day, he just turned 40. Happy late birthday, Nick, if you see the show. But on the 29th of last month, he just turned 46. And yeah, so never been addicted to drugs, never been an alcoholic, never been locked up. Uh, Works and lives in Fishers, Indiana, 12 miles from mom. She lives in Fortville, Indiana. Has beat cancer 3 times and survived H1N1 bird flu. He had a when he was 19 years old. Um, it was the year that I came home. It was the year after I came home from prison, and Layla was pregnant with our daughter, Allie, and my brother was fighting cancer, plasma cell cytoma, and it was a rare condition that in 40 some years in Indiana they had never seen in anybody under the age of 67 or 72. It was something that was seen only in old folks, and it grew around a bundle of nerves on his spine. Ended up sending him to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and they cured him of it. I did some stem cell transplants. They did a harvest, took all his white blood cells out, put him in an incubator, hit him with 2 massive doses of chemotherapy over a 3-day weekend, put him back on the machine, put all his white blood cells back in him, and cured him. 4 years ago, a spot came up on his kidney. Shaved it off. Thought he was going to lose a kidney. Ended up only losing 5% of it and what was attached to it. It came back up again, though. Had to have another surgery here like a year ago. And then within the 10 years in between that, bird flu almost kills him. Worse than any of the 3 cancers, but doesn't have a tarnish or a blemish on his record. So, the average Joe, see, this is where I try to connect with people with my spiritual knowledge that God has given me and the wisdom of the kingdom, not of the world. The average Joe that sits on church every Sunday and writes a big check and puts it in the offering plate and goes back out and wears their religion, and I'm not judging anybody, but wears their religion on their coat sleeves, would say, how can a caring, loving God allow that to happen to an innocent child? You know, we're not of this world, though, Tim. You understand what I'm saying? So we're only in this world in a physical body for however long, the Lord allows us to be. And then we're going back to where we came from, which is the spiritual realm. So whatever happens on this earth, it's just the way the ball bounces sometimes. Sometimes you get a curve ball, sometimes you get a strike. You might hit the curve ball for a home run, and you might strike out on the strike. Does it make sense? No. You would have thought you hit the one that was coming straight down the pipe, but you hit the 500 footer for your 500 home run off the curve ball. That was actually a ball at the plate. Does it make sense? No. Is it how it goes down? It is. And then so here's the 50-year-old that's been the black sheep, that's had multiple failures. You know what I mean? That's been addicted. That's been an alcoholic. That's was a slave to methamphetamines for 30 plus years. 7 trips to prison in Indiana. I've been to every prison in the state of Indiana except for 2. One of them was the hospice for the people that are dying, and the other one was Newcastle, which is for sex offenders. Obviously, I'm never going to be at those 2. I'm not a sex offender, and I'm not dying. And so, yeah. So I got the whole tour of every prison in the state that was a level 2, 3, or higher, and cashed out my number when I got out in 2018. I said I'm never going back. That deal with beating up that guy that tried to rape my ex-wife, was I out on the streets looking for that guy, Tim? No. Was it a pride thing? Probably, but had they not put him in the cell block with me, at the end of the day, I wasn't going to get up and eat breakfast with that. He wasn't going to live in that pod. Just I think you can relate. We're both men. That's a man thing. That she's a woman. Women and child are zero tolerance. I don't care if the whole world's going to burn down. You leave the kids and the children out of it. The women and children out of it. That's the way I was raised up. And then so, it was just like, I'm done. I'm never going back to prison again. Have I battled with methamphetamines since I got out 8 years ago? Absolutely. Have I had a few run-ins with the law? Yes. But The criminal shit ended in 2016 and had been done for 2 years when I got out 2018. Uh, which all of my criminal history is violence and drugs. Never was a burglar. I'm not judging those guys because the crime is a crime and a felony is a felony. However, even in my weakest, most lamest, addicted, been up for a month, whatever, homeless for 3 years, for the best of a person's ability to wrap their mind around this, I still held on to a moral and ethical code. Tim. I never stole food. I never flew a sign on an off ramp because my moral compass, how I was raised, even though I was addicted and fiending for methamphetamines, I can't stand on an off ramp flying a sign that says need money or put a write a lie on there trying to get a bus ticket. And then look these people in the eye and tell them thank you that I'm hungry and homeless and I appreciate it, knowing damn good and well it's going to go in my arm or up my nose or you know what I mean in my lungs. And then so if I wasn't, even if I was homeless and didn't have money for drugs, I did without. Or I went somewhere where somebody would get me high and there was no fee for it. You know what I'm saying? Uh, because I just didn't do that. But like I say, no pun intended to anybody else. But I never was a burglar. I never was a thief. I wasn't a robber. I wasn't a murderer. I wasn't a pedophile. I wasn't a rapist. You understand what I'm saying? I didn't violate. I've never stole from the church. I never would ever even entertain the idea of hurting a woman or a child or the elderly. You understand what I'm saying? It was methamphetamines, manufacturings. It was violence, fighting. The deal was protecting my grandparents when I was 18. The deal was beating up the guy that tried to rape my ex-wife. You understand what I'm saying? And then multiple violations for probation and parole that put me right back on revoking suspended sentences that were probably a third of those trips to the penitentiary. And, you know, I stepped into 50 owning it with both feet. I love how I feel. I love being 50. I love the fact that God let me make it here, and I wouldn't be here today without Him. I would have been dead 30 years ago, if not longer. Uh, and I give all praise and glorification to the Lord Jesus Christ for that, because it wasn't me; it was Him that saved me, Tim. So moving forward, I don't know, Tim. It's just I hope that I can touch other people's lives. Um, because it's growth for me. It holds me accountable. Being on your show is an honor. I know we've been chasing each other around for 3 months trying to get this thing hammered down, and that's why I reached back out to you because I told you, weeks ago. I don't know what's coming up, Tim, and I want you to know wholeheartedly as a man, there's nothing fake about me. I'm not spinning you, but you know what I mean. The companies I was working for and what was going on, we never knew ahead of time what was going on. We might get the call. I said, "Hey, fire them up, Clay. We're heading to Mobile." All right, bet. But yeah, that's why I reached back out to you, Tim, because I wanted to be able for you and I to be able to touch down on between the levees.
Well, I do appreciate that. I want to get into your time in the river, but let's still with this with your prison time and your addiction issues. Um, Kind of where were you at in life in those times? Tell me about 25 years in prison. I mean, obviously, why you'll never go back, but uh, anything that happened in there that shaped who you are today.
10 years in the Brotherhood did from the year, well, 8 years. Uh, I entered into. I wasn't looking to join. I was not into the Aryan Brotherhood. I have a lot of close friends that are Aryan Brotherhood. However, I'm loyal to whatever I'm part of, and I'm real in my beliefs. And there's two things I'm not. Uh, I'm not a racist, and I don't hate anybody. And so, can I be friends with some of those people that are? However, I'm not going to be attached to it or labeled by it. And so they chased me around for 3 years trying to get me to join the Aryan Brotherhood. And I said, I love you guys. We aid and assist each other. I mean, just on the white collar thing in the penitentiary system. However, if there was a riot or whatnot. But however, I don't attach myself to propaganda, Tim. I'm not better than you because I'm a towboater and you do between the levees, or vice versa. I'm not better than you because my shirt is light blue and yours is dark blue. And that's what propaganda is. Propaganda says because you're white, you're better than everybody else. And that's bullshit. I've had, when I've been in the trenches and I've been homeless, I'm going to tell you this. as a white man on a scale of 0 to 100%. 60% of my help in life came from Mexican men and women. The other 30% came from black men and women. That left 10%. Of the remaining 10%, only 7 of that came from white women. And I would say the lame 3% came from my own white men and my own Anglo-Saxon race. That's the thing about us. Oh, it ain't got nothing to do with me. That's that's a Smith. They're not an Adams. Oh, we don't want to be involved in that. And so I think white people, and I say this because I can speak. I have a right to speak on this because I've lived both sides of the fence. You understand? I've been homeless. I've had everything. I've had nothing. I've been homeless. I've lived in $400,000 houses. I've had nice cars. I've rode bicycles. I've had food. I haven't had food. I've had nice clothes. I've had no clothes. And the same underwear on for 7 days, walking the streets. I spent half my life in, half my life out. I've been an addict. I've been sober. I've been an alcoholic. I've been sober. There's nothing that I can't relate to. I've been molested. I've been abused. You understand what I'm saying? And so, yeah, I can speak on that. But I think we as a white race, and I'm not going to go off too far into this, but we forgot our roots. We forgot what unity was. We forgot what war was. We don't, there is no unity amongst ourselves anymore. Yeah, if you're a towboater, we're a family. Yeah, if you're in a good church, yeah, you have a Christian brother and sisterhood. But to walk out here in this trailer park to see some other white folk, you're not even going to get a wave or a how you doing. And I think so. I don't know what has happened throughout our generations. I'm X generation, but somewhere the stick broke or the wires got crossed, and we have forgot as white Caucasians that we are the same people, man or woman, child or adult. And it's not a, well, that ain't got nothing to do with me. Well, I don't know them. But you want to sit in church on Sunday and pray to God and ask for your sins to be forgiven and for you to be healed. But then you leave church and you go out to eat afterwards and you see the homeless guy down here who is also white and you drive right past him. Well, then the following Sunday, he's sitting in the church and you're over there going, that's the stuff that I'm talking about. That's fake. That's not real in God's eyes. That's not real in human eyes, and that's not real as a person. That's wearing your faith and your religion on your coat sleeve. It's good when it's good, or when you need something, or when you get in a bind. But then you step back in the world and you say, okay, well, don't need you, Jesus. I'm going to handle this. Well, there's a proverb that says, "Man makes a lot of plans, but it's God that makes the way straight his path." And I can attest to that. I can attest to that. I know God. He doesn't speak to me like you and I were speaking to each other on between the levees. He moves me by my conscience and my moral compass and gives me that wisdom that I seek from the kingdom, not of the world. So I understand the things that people don't. Do I wish everybody was where I'm at spiritually? Yes. Is there things that I can do to help others reach that spiritual level? Absolutely. But like the other things that I mentioned to you, the flip side of that is people that don't have a really honest, sincere Christian walk with the Lord, I can relate to them, but they can't wrap their mind around where I'm at in life. I'm not saying that doesn't make me better than them. This isn't we're not. This isn't coattailing measurements here. You know what I'm saying about who's better than who? But I'm saying they don't get it. They don't get it because traditional was you work Monday through Friday, you work on the farm on Saturday, you go to church on Sunday and you rest. You read the Chicago Tribune, the New York Times, you check the stock market, it starts over again on Monday. So everything that you do and all the bullshit that goes with it from Monday through Saturday. So if you're spending 6 days in the world and living for self, and then you give an hour or two of it to the Lord on Sunday, pretty good in math, Tim. That's not going to be a very good algebra formula or equation because what you do to one side, you got to do the other. So, you know, when it comes to that, and like I say, I want to get moving on to other things on the show here with you. You're going to have to start your day with it. And I've been saying this for several years now, and I don't wish this upon anybody, but I speak upon my own experience and my own personal walk, not what somebody else has told me that somebody else went through. I'm talking about what Clay Adams. Clayton Keith Adams has went through. And that for me, it's different for everybody, as it will be with anything else. But it took the Lord allowing me to walk through the life that I chose to walk through as an addict and a self-serving, immature, self-righteous, just didn't give a fuck about anything type young boy, immature man, grown adult for many years to be chastened by that. And, you know, answer your question. I'll tell you this right here. I'll put it like this. Okay, so here I am at 50 looking back at 26. Okay. Let me take you back to 26 looking forward. This is the difference. So if the Lord came down today and he says, Clay, I'll tell you what, it's a one time deal. If he came down right now, if Jesus came down right and said, listen, you want to go back to being 25? I'll let you go back to being 25 years old. However, there's one key thing about that. This is the stipulation. Everything that you've gained, including your spiritual walk and where you are with me and the Father and the Holy Spirit kingdom, at 50 counting, you can't take that back with you to be 25. You have to go back to who you were at 25. But I'll let you start those 20. I'll give you 25 years back. Ain't no way. I wouldn't trade what I've went through and where I'm at in life today at 50 to go back and have a 25-year-old body. Ain't no way. No amount of money would I do that if God Himself come down. And this is why. When I got that first manufacturing charge, this would have been my second trip to prison in 2002. The prosecutor at the time voted in, seated Democratic prosecutor. His name was John Severs, friend of the family. John Severs' brother, Dan Severs, and his wife, Donna, all were in cahoots and worked in the office with my grandmother at Good Samaritan Hospital. So nothing illegal was done, but I got 12 years instead of 25 years. I still got prison time and I still had the conviction, but I didn't get the habitual offender. You know what I mean? But he did it in a way that it wasn't dirty and it wasn't illegal, but it was still a favor, not to me, a favor to John and Bonnie Adams out of respect for them because I was the oldest grandson and the first grandson. But this is what I want to tell you. He said, Clay, I'll offer you 10 years and count it a blessing for your criminal record. Well, I was charged with the B felony, and 10 years was presumptive. 10 could be added, or up to 4 could be subtracted for mitigating circumstances. Well, all of my circumstances was beyond aggravating. Criminal history, drug charges, violence, habitual offender. I had more than 3 unrelated felony convictions in 10 years. And then so I'm thinking to myself as I sit back there in H block in the old county jail, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. Well, hell, 31, I'll still be young, Tim. I'll still look good. I'll still be, I'll be able to pick up girls. That's no big deal. But it's the mindset. Somebody told me hindsight is 2020, and I never cared to understand that. I'm not even enough to even ask somebody for an explanation. But I would hear it from time to time throughout my life. They would say hindsight is 2020, and I never got it. I didn't. What does that mean? You know what I mean? So when I was 26, looking forward, it was like I lived my life, not only not giving a damn about anything, but as if I was going to live forever. Like death was off the table. That was people don't die. And I lived that with my grandfather, who was my dad and my best friend and my grandpa to me. It's like grandpa's going to live forever, you know? And then so I just wished my life away. Oh, what's 5 years? Well, understanding now the things that I didn't then and where I'm at with Jesus Christ in the book of Revelations is, God says at the end of your life, you're living for me and in the spirit, not in the flesh, walking in the light, not in the darkness of the world. I'll give you back the years that the locust stole. So if you translate that and jump back over to Jeremiah 29:11, it talks about the 70 years in Babylon, being in exile. God says, I have a plan for you. I have a purpose for you, that I will restore your fortunes to you, give you a purpose and a life and a hope, and return to you the things that you were lost. So how do I understand that and relate that to my life, Tim, is My 25 years of Babylon and exile was in the penitentiary. Those are my lost years. You understand what I'm saying? And then so that I wished away and screwed off and just, who cares? Okay. Oh, 4 more years in prison, sure. And I never once went to jury trial. I signed myself in all 7 times in my life on plea bargains. And I just didn't care. I didn't care. And it wasn't because I was dumb or uneducated. I just didn't care about the consequences and was going to live however I wanted to live, whether it was within the law or without it. And so now understanding hindsight, being, hindsight is 2020, and looking back from 50 at 26, I'm thinking, what a dumbass. I would like to go back to the 26-year-old class, slap the living shit out of him and say, dude, what are you doing? Let me tell you what you're going to be understanding in 24 years that you don't understand now. Because at the end of the day, to close out the topic on this, is I pray that what I'm doing by putting God first, and then after God, others, and then somewhere after God and then others, there's self. He's going to take care of me. And I pray that He gives me at least one of those years back, of those 25 at the end of my life, so I can serve Him and touch other people's lives and share it with whoever is in my life at that time, whether it be my grandkids, hopefully at some point, or my daughter later on when, things, maybe or maybe not. I don't know the Lord's will, but I'm letting Him deal with that, Tim. And, it just, but I got to keep my eyes on Him. I can't not, and I will not entertain or live my life with the worries of the world. I won't do it. I won't do it because we don't have any power over Tim, and we can't change it anyway. So what does it matter?
Well, I'm very happy to have caught you on this end of things, and appreciate that you're as willing to share as you have been. I know we're on a bit of a time constraint, so I'd like to kind of jump forward if we do want to reconvene at a later time to dive into the nitty-gritty of those violent offenses, of those issues with substances. Happy to do that, further down the line. But let's fast forward. I think 2018, you said the last time you left prison.
Yes.
What was that experience getting out, and how did you find yourself in the river industry?
It was an awesome deal. So I refer to him as my brother, even though we aren't blood, and we have been friends since 2018. But Tom McPherson, he's from Owensboro, Kentucky. He's 3 years older than me. Short gentleman, about the same height as me. Grew up an old Kentucky boy. Channel bang dang, you know what I mean? Type, well, talk to me. What the fuck? You back on the stuff? But Tom was in methamphetamine addict. So he was coming out of federal prison. I had just got out of state prison, and the feds do a step down process. So you go from behind the fence to a camp to a monitored work release type deal, and then supervised parole. Not so with the state in Indiana. You might be in a shoe program, 23 and 1, stepping out of your cell into a sliding shower, or being walked in cuffs and shackles to the shower on a dog leash. And then the next day you get out of prison and they put you on a bus and they send you home, and then there you are on the streets. So there's no transition. Not so with the feds. Well, anyway, for the longest time, the VOA, which is the Volunteers of America, uh, is one of the facilities that the federal government has used as a step down process. So Tom was coming out of a camp into the step down process and out of federal prison. He was a methamphetamine cook, uh, red phosphorus and anhydrous ammonia, and had done a substantial amount of time. Was on federal parole, was on state parole out of Kentucky. So yeah, he had a lot of supervision, and one doesn't supersede the other, so he had to see both them people. Well, I mean, of course, federal is higher than state, but he still had to see both of them. And so I had been out of prison 6 weeks, Tim, and I paroled back to the men's rescue mission. Had nowhere to go, homeless, living in the men's rescue mission. They kick you out at 7 in the morning. You got to stand in line at 4 o'clock at night to try to get back in. There wasn't no hanging around all day long, laid up in a bed watching a flat screen on government funding. You was on the bricks. Uh, 42 years old. I was in a different place in life, criminally, but I hadn't anywhere near entertained where I wanted to be yet. I hadn't had enough of the enough. I was done with the criminal stuff. I didn't break the law anymore. Made sure my driver's license was valid, wore my seatbelt, make sure everything was insured and plated. I wasn't out committing crimes, but I was still going to get high. I'm still going to drink. I'm still going to get high. And so, is it the drugs that cause the problem in themselves? Well, they have their own thing going on. But the problem is the atmosphere of what the drug life is and everything that comes with that. That creates the horrible problem for all of us: the homelessness, the crime, the the violence from the withdrawals and what people will or won't do to get drugs. I mean, not everybody is walking down the street saying, "Well, I don't have any money and I'm not going to commit a crime." You know, did I choose to be like that? Yeah. You know, I didn't bash windows out or walk in a gas station with pistols, but that was me. I don't knock the guys that do it, but if I went to jail, it was going to be for cooking dope, not for stealing fucking $75 to get dope. You know, you understand? It's like if I was going to go back to prison, they was going to have to catch me manufacturing my drug of choice. It wasn't going to be the same 10 years for $75 I jacked somebody for 2 grams. I mean, that just didn't make sense to me. But that's just how I am. That's just Clay Evans. So yeah, so they kick us out. You know what I mean? At 7 in the morning, I'm on the streets of Evansville, Indiana. You know, third largest city in the state of Indiana. It's on the across the Ohio River. So anyway, I'm out. I've been out of prison 42 days and already flunked 3 drug screens with my parole officer. Meth, meth. The last one for meth and weed. And but I hadn't picked up any new charges. Hadn't had any contact with the law. And all that going on. Showed up for all my appointments an hour early. Was working, living at the address I was supposed to, and I hadn't been out of the parole district, which was at the time was parole district 4A in southern Indiana. And in Indiana, you're only allowed to travel in the county that you're on parole in and the bordering counties. You can't go 2 counties over from the county that you're on parole in or there, and you definitely can't leave the state. I tell you that to understand this. They wouldn't send me back behind the fence. They said he's not done anything. The parole board said he's not done anything to warrant going back in. You got to offer him something else. So my parole officer said, "Hey man, you want to do a program?" I said, "Absolutely." So I sat in jail for 7 days, and they let me go to the VOA. Well, now at this time, is I was one of the first ones when they switched this up. Now they made the VOA a stateside, not just for feds. Now the feds was on one side of the building. The state, we didn't live together. We were on separate sides of the building, a state side and a fed side. But we went outside and smoked together. We ate in the chow hall together, you know what I'm saying? But we had 2 different dorms. That's where I met Tom McPherson, whom I refer to as my best friend and brother. I can call Tom today if I need money. I don't have to give him an explanation. We call and talk each other every day. And long and short of it was he was going back to work where he had worked for them in the early 90s. Now, this is 2018. But he was going to go back to work for Evansville Marine Service. Tom was the first mate. And so I was 42, Tom was 45. And I said, dude, I've always wanted to work on the river, but I never knew how to. I remember when I was a kid on the fuel truck on the semi, as we would go over the twin bridges from Evansville into Henderson, I would look down at the Ohio River and see these barges being shoved. And I'm like, how does one even go about trying to get on something like that? But that's got to be the coolest gig ever. I remember that as a 10-year-old boy looking out the windows going over the Ohio River. Well, here I am, first mate hard times. Senior mate for the last 4 years, been on the river for 8 years. Tom gets me on. So I start out at $10 an hour on the cleaning dock, cleaning the inside of the barges. Then when we would be caught up, Tom would take me out on the boat with him. So I would go out on what was the nicest and newest boat for Evansville Marine Service called the Brantley B. And it managed the loaded fleet, the empty fleet, and the 7 docks that they managed, as well as our cleaning dock there in downtown Evansville. And so yeah, he started teaching me how to lay lines, what wires were, pulling fleets, high water lines, what this line does, if this one stretches, if this one, all the schematics, because you have English and then you have German, or you have French, or you have Italian. They're 2 separate things. Anything on land is not what it is on the water. It's his whole, a towboater is a lifestyle. A captain is a pilot. A propeller is a wheel. A cable is a wire. A rope is the line. And you know, what I mean, you don't refer to a line as a rope. You don't ever call a wire or a cable. You understand what I'm saying? It's just like the captain is the pilot. You know, so it has its own language out there. You know, it's not 10-4 like a trucker. It's Roger that. You know, so it's a lifestyle and it's a career and it is something you embody. Is it like, okay, this is the only thing that you can relate it to on land. It's still part of the financial matrix. And with that, I mean by that, Tim, is that we're still trading time for money of our life. And that's what the financial matrix is. You trade time for money, whether it's in a warehouse, whether it's on a 30-day hitch, whether it's for your working for yourself. It's all the financial matrix. We're trading time for money. Does that make sense? Yeah. So then I became a fleet greenhorn, and then I became a fleet mate. And I was the mate on the Brantley B, one of two mates, and for Captain Aaron Walker, uh, who
With what company and where at?
that was Evansville Marine Service in Evansville.
Okay.
Yeah. So then moving forward 8 years, I went on to line tow, which travels and is going to live on boat for Excel Marine, running from Point Pleasant, West Virginia, up to Mile Zero on a coal shoving contract for the power plants for Campbell Transportation. And I did that. So when you leave the fleets as a mate, you'll step down to it as it's a step down. So whatever you are when you leave the fleets, you'll be one level less than that on a line tow boat. So I left the fleets as a mate and stepped on a line tow boat as an experienced deckhand. Uh, Three hitches made second mate though. You know what I mean? So, but it's different. You're going from lines to wires. You're going from one barge to 15 barges, and you're going to be building tow, and then you're going to be going through 1,200-foot locks. Some of them are, you know, you'll have to, you know, the lock shut down. You got a double lock, so you'll have to break the tow apart. So that was, you know, I had to learn all that stuff that was different than the fleets, or spotting barges at the docks.
Now,
Oh
Was this Western Rivers?
no, I left
Okay.
Evansville Marine Service and went to Excel Marine.
This is still
Uh,
Excel. Okay.
yeah, this was Excel Marine in Paducah. When I left Excel Marine, then I went to Western Rivers, and that was home for almost 4 years. Uh, I went from the Ohio River to the Mississippi River, and the intercoastal waterways, and the Tom Bigby. That was the three different bodies of water that I worked on while at Western Rivers. I went from a 4,200 horsepower boat to a 6,000 horsepower boat to a 12.5. My last hitch was them. I was on the Lewis Strait and the Earl Etheridge, a 6,000, and their uh, big boat, Lewis Strait. That was Grandpa Lewis. That was Charles Strait's dad. So you know, Jason and Natalie Strait. That was their grandpa. So that's their poster boat. That's the, you know, that's like the Ray or the K Eckstein for Marquette. You know what I mean? That's the, you know, named after the big people. So yeah, Grandpa Lewis, and it's a beautiful boat. I rode that boat for 52 or 58 days. I can't remember exactly. 56 or 58 days straight. I rode that boat. I stepped on there, running deckhand. Uh, you know, was quickly asked to run second mate behind Chia, who's been working for Captain Bobby Wilson for 7 years. And it was a learning process. Here I am, at the time, a 49-year-old mate, um, running behind a 27-year-old mate, 28-year-old mate. Do I have problems taking orders from somebody that's half my age? No. But it was a little intimidating because it was a learning. It was a learn. You know, here's the thing about life leadership. And Dale Dortch, if you see this, this is part of what you taught me when I, you know, was involved in that for 4 years in Paducah. That's a whole nother topic. But every leader, at the point that they reach, okay, once you reach the top of what you do, Tim, your learning curve stops. If you can't be led by somebody else that does the same thing you do on a larger scale with more experience, more knowledge, more years, more tools. So if you meet this individual that does the same thing you do, and you can't be led by him, your learning curve stops. So as a leader, when I stepped on the Lewis Strait, I had to be able to be led by somebody that was half my age. that had a year less on the river than I had, that spent his whole 7 years on large tows. You know what I mean? On, heavy tow. Didn't Never been to a lock, never worked in the fleets, never shoved on the ICW, you know? And so there were times where I had to check myself and say, hey, yeah, you know things he doesn't, but he knows things you know. He showed me little, I mean, it got down to where when you're 8 wide and 7 long and you've got 56 barges in front of you, you're shoving 9 acres. You know what I mean? 9 acres is a lot. Better remember where you set your tools at. Better remember where you put your bottle of water down at, because I've spent hours looking for stuff before out there. Um, but he started showing me little intricate stuff. Like when you're stacking straps, you don't want, every strap has a babbitt on it where they've clamped the wire together. So if you're, on your center cable, so when you're putting your strap on there, you don't want to stack straps so all the babbitts end up on top of each other, because then it's going to be like this. It's going to have a lean to it. So he showed me, he said, like, if you put your strap down, he said, I'm just giving you little intricate stuff I've picked up and taught myself, and I'm just giving you nuggets. So if you lay this strap down so your babbit's on this side, you'll put the other strap so the babbit's on this side. So now the straps are going to lay level on top of each other. So I picked up a lot of things from him, and it took me, my leadership and my knowledge to the next level. And I was able to grow through that experience. And but then moving forward, and then probably close this out with the end of where I'm at 50, Tim, for today, if that's okay with you here in about 5 minutes. I don't want to. It's the weekend. It's the only time I've got with my girl, and we're over here with the kids. So I told them I'd walk over and we'd pick this back up. But so I told myself when I was at Western River. So there were some things that happened. I relapsed on the boat 5 days before I got off. And it wasn't a Coast Guard thing or anything like that. Somebody on the boat blew the whistle on me. Told the office they were concerned that I had gotten high on the boat. And I didn't lie to them about it. But at the same time, I wasn't sure I was clean and it was out of my system. But behind closed doors at Western Rivers, they asked me to take a drug screen. I told them I wouldn't do it. So I resigned. And that was that. It wasn't turned in as a refusal. They didn't send me down to the testing site. It was a simple, hey, because those people to this day are my family. It's like I talked to them. I just talked to Natalie yesterday. There was times when I was in New Orleans in the last 4 months and I needed some money. And Natalie got up in the middle of the night to Venmo me $30 to take an Uber out of a horribly bad area I was in New Orleans. And New Orleans is a machine that never stops shifting gears. And I've been a lot of places in my life. And let me tell you about that deal down there. You got to be careful, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, those people are the Straits are family to me. So I wanted to leave on good terms and I wanted to keep it on good terms. Plus, here's another thing where I allowed that to go down the way that it did. I told myself at 50 it was going to be a game changer. Can I run next to a 30-year-old all day long? Am I in the best shape of my life? Yes, I am. Am I 50 years old? Yeah. Do I have health problems other than high blood pressure that I'm getting ready? I got the beetroot on the way and I'm taking magnesium for it. And, I'm probably going to be done with these after it's gone. So that will narrow it down to maybe a couple cold beers every now and then and a little bit of chewing tobacco. But, you got to start somewhere. But, and then so, but I don't want to be on medication. I don't want to be on big pharma. I want to do it naturally. I want to do it with water, magnesium, and beetroot. Because last time I did it with the carnivore diet, I got my blood pressure all the way down without taking any pills from the government or the big pharma. And when my blood pressure was, doctors were saying, dude, how do you do it? I said, magnesium, carnivore diet, water, and exercise, you know? And then so, but I said, not jumping around, Tim, I get long winded sometimes. And I hope that this has been everything that you want it to for between the levees so far. Uh, my friends would say, hey, you want to hear a story? I was like, or can I tell you guys a story? And they would be like, yeah, sure. However, don't Stephen King us. And drag it on. So, but anyway, Tim, I didn't want to manage 30 to 50 barges anymore at 50 years old. Can I? Yeah. Can I work next to a 30-year-old all day long? Absolutely. However, what it does to my body at 50 and it does to his body at 30 are two different things. And after about 6, 7, 8 days of constant tow work, southbound starting here in Baton Rouge down to Myrtle Grove, which is 3 days and about 13 stops, constant rolling wires, breaking couplings, moving barges, picking up, dropping. And then at Myrtle Grove, we start the northbound, top around, and we start northbound journey. 7 days down from St. Louis, 10 days up from Myrtle Grove. And then it'll be the same 12, 13 stops from Myrtle Grove till we get to Baton Rouge. Baton Rouge, we drop the sounders in, tow work's done, we'll have our 30, and we don't have it. Nothing is going to happen until we get to Vicksburg, Mississippi, where we're going to take on fuel and groceries and probably pick up or drop one barge, and then not again until the next stop, from Vicksburg, which would be 100 miles. And but yeah, so I said, I don't want to do the big tows anymore. I want to work on a smaller boat. Uh, I don't want to have to deal with a big deck crew. I really don't want to deal with a cook. Uh, you know, Crock pots are nice. Ovens are nice. Uh, you know, uh, and cooking for ourselves. I don't know if you've watched any of my stuff on TikTok, but I'm the universal mate. I can drive a boat. I can run a boat. I'm a mate on a boat. I clean on a boat. I can cook on a boat. You know what I mean? So I mean, I can shove 30 or I can shove one. I can take us through a train bridge or I can take us through Algiers Lock or Industrial Locks or whatever, Hannibal Lock or Lock 27, Lock 26, all the way up to Lock 6 on Upper Mississippi. Whatever, it don't matter. So I'm well rounded. And I'm very grateful for that because I've got it all, from cleaning up this much ammonium nitrate 8 years ago out of a barge for an inspector to 50 barge tow, multiple rivers, intercoastal waterways, to back down to shoving one or two barges now for about the same money. So where am I going from here at 50? Once I get everything, this is what's going on right now, Tim, and we'll close out with this. Right now, I'm just tripping and looking for a home company and waiting patiently on time. Uh, I've got a couple felonies that are probably going to have to age 2 more years uh, before I'll be able to get my tankerman's license. So to close out my career, probably at about the age of 52 on until I'm done with the water, uh, ultimately will be spent as an onshore or offshore tankerman. I don't care about the wheelhouse. I like the elements, and I'm not. I don't care about. I don't care about $1,000 a day, and everything that comes with that. As long as I've got everything that I need and a couple things that I want, I'm content. I'm like Paul. I've had everything and I've had nothing, but I've learned to be content in both situations. And the world and material stuff isn't what makes me happy. Money isn't. Money is just a tool, you know, that helps us, get the things that are, we need, to provide. But love and touching other people's lives and a deep, deep personal relationship with Jesus Christ and being blessed by the good Lord Jesus Christ, because everything comes from Him, no matter what it is, Tim. To be able to be doing what I do, that is my passions, and living my dream in real time every single day. Because I love when I get that call, they say, hey, I need you to come to the boat. Because I know where I'm going back to, where there's the bullshit of the world doesn't exist. There's no anxiety. There's no stress. And I'm the closest to God that I've ever found anywhere else on this earth when I'm on that water. And, I tell people, when Satan got thrown out of heaven, God gave him the earth. But Jesus is the one that walked on the water. So that's where I find my home and my peace out there. Tim, if it's okay with you, we'll take a break today.
Yeah, no, I think this is great for the final episode of season three. I hope you do enjoy time with family this afternoon and evening. And if you do have time tomorrow, we'll reconvene. Maybe you'll be part of season four here in a couple
That would
months.
be great. That would be great. I would like moving forward wherever you need me, or if I'm invited, that's an honor. Uh, yeah, whenever you run through your cycle of host or co-host or whatever, yeah, I'm always open, and that would be an honor. I would love to share whatever I can and to touch other people's lives. And like I say, Tim, this is the first time you and I have actually got to sit down and see and meet each other. It's truly an honor, my friend, and I extend that generosity to you from here at home in Fort Allen, Louisiana.
Well, I do appreciate it, man, and we will keep in touch.
Absolutely, my friend. God bless, and yeah, most definitely send me. I don't know how to look this up. Where this is between the levees is going to be.
I'm on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, but I'll send you a link to it.
Yeah, please do.